All right. Hi, Simon, if I pronounce it correctly.
Yes,
Welcome to Honest AI. It's a really pleasure to have you here.
it's a pleasure for me to be here and to talk with you in a public manner because we've talked a lot, but we haven't done it this.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And yes, we had so many interesting conversations that I think it's a public service to record them and put them out for others to listen, to learn from you. Just briefly, the way I met you was I think from a LinkedIn post you sent several months ago. I can't even recall the topic now of that post, but what really got me off the mindless scrolling was that on LinkedIn these days there are a lot of catchy, short, punchy posts that most of them are written by AI. I'm a culprit as well. Like most of my posts are written with AI assisting software. I really enjoyed reading someone like you who put a lot of thinking, and it really stopped me to think properly, whereas most of the content out there is optimized just for a quick peel and move on. And I really like the way you play with your philosophical background. I'm very passionate about philosophy. I was, when I was selecting what to study at university, I was undecided between physics and philosophy. I went into physics, but always a bit regretted I didn't do much philosophy in my life.
You chose employment.
Yeah, probably that was smart on another way. Yeah, and I really like the way you use philosophy to speak about big questions related to the way companies work, about business strategy, about AI. Like the main topic of this podcast is about speaking honestly about AI, and I think you do this topic a great service. Just before we start diving into some of the questions and topics I want to cover, I'd like to learn a bit more about your background, your story, your love for philosophy, and how is that informing your job and so on. Yeah.
Okay, so I am Simon. I'm from Colombia. I am a philosopher. I studied philosophy in the university. I also hold a master's of philosophy and also it's like an MBA, but it's not exactly an MBA. That is like a Master of Science in Business Administration. My love from philosophy, I think it comes from my childhood and it is highly linked to my mother. I think my mother is not a philosopher. She says she's a philosopher, but she was a person that taught me a lot about thinking on my own language because she was always teaching me to reflect on the words I use. And I think that philosophy is, in many senses, I don't think it is in the all senses, but in many senses, it is a thinking on language. It is a way to be aware of our own language. And I think that comes from my mother when she taught me to think in the power of words in what I was saying when I was saying something. Then I think I discovered properly philosophy when I was 13 years old. And my brother is older than me, 2 years older than me. And once he went to the house from school and he taught me the philosophical argument of Descartes to the God's existence. So I was amazed by that argument, one of the two arguments that Descartes has in the meditations. And I think that my love for philosophy started in that moment, very, very linked to the Descartes' argument of God's existence. Then I started to study journalism in my university. I didn't like it, so I decided to change to philosophy. And it was because I discovered it was the only career or the only discipline that I could stand. I didn't stand anything else, not economy, not history, not anything else. And I just like philosophy and I decided to do the only thing I liked. It was a very passionate decision. It was not a calculated decision. I didn't think what was I going to do after school, after college. I just thought I have to do this. So I did it.
Awesome. Good choice. And I've been reading in one of your LinkedIn posts that you wrote that you came to business because you realized philosophy discovers where value is and what mental paradigms prevent us from delivering it. I
Yeah.
found that sentence quite interesting, and a lot of philosophers stay in academia or just abandon philosophy. So what was the moment where you realized philosophy could belong to business, boardroom, strategy, and if you can expand more on that sentence?
I think it didn't have a moment. It was a process, but it had some uh, special moments in the process. I think that the first moment was when I knew about Christian Matzberg, who is a consultant from a consultancy company that is called Red Associates
Mm.
from Denmark. He's a philosopher, uh, and he founded that consultancy company to help companies from a humanistic point of view.
Mm.
So he worked there. He's now retired from Red with sociologists, anthropologists, people from arts. And the interesting work of Matzberg was that he was always trying to discover from a phenomenological point of view what was the central phenomena of the business. He thought that it was always an underlying phenomena for the business context, and he tried to discover that for many companies like Ford, Lego, Coca-Cola, some other big companies. And to discover the work of Matzberg was like a very important moment in that process. Nevertheless, I don't think I understood it completely in that moment. But that discovery inspired me to go to the business world with my philosophical side, because I said I could learn something employable. I could learn, I don't know, coding, computer science, or something like that to be a developer. But I thought I have to, as the strategists, theorists say, I have to compete from my advantage. My advantage is not to do something other of what I am. I have to be what I am. But I started realizing that I couldn't be far from the world. That's the real discovery for me. Was not the practical uh, use or of some philosophical ideas. What was the discovery of the insight that I had of not be far from the world? Because philosophers, as you were saying, in the academia, they discuss among them, they they don't know anything about the non-philosophy world.
Mhm.
So I thought that it was a philosophical problem, because most of philosophy problems arise from the world, and then the philosophers don't go back to the world. They uh, closed in their own world, and they forget what it means to be a human. As David Hume says in a very beautiful passage, he says, "Be a philosopher, but don't forget to be a human being." And I think that's the real point, and that's what I discovered. I don't know when, but I discovered it in some moment of that process.
It's funny. I think many software engineers, technologists probably suffer the same problem. They live quite detached from the real world. And I want to get a bit deeper into that sentence that you wrote, that philosophy discover where the value is and what mental paradigms prevent us from delivering it. This
Okay.
is, to me, is very interesting because I see this in myself often, that I'm working on something and I have a lot of probably mental paradigms or filters or substrata that just prevents me to see solutions that I don't see at the moment, or just the voice that closes a lot of doors that probably should be better keeping them open. But
Yes.
yeah, I'd be interested to learn what you discovered on those lines.
So I will talk about the first idea.
Yeah.
Philosophy discovers where the value is. Value is probably one of the most misunderstood words in the business world because it is a word used for everything. You deliver value, you give value, you capture value, a company has a value or something like that. But it is most understood
Yes.
and economical. I think there is some verbs. So, uh, value is mostly understood in a not even in an economical way, maybe in a financial way. Value is a price, yes, and value is an amount of money, to put it simple. Uh, I think that conception of value forgets why that amount of money exists. Yes, why a shareholder, for example, takes some money from the business revenue, yes, the profit, or why a customer gives some of his or her money to a product. Yes, when you see just the number, you forget the explanation. Yes, and I think the reflection is that that value is the sign, is the external manifestation of something that is valued by someone or some group of people or something, and that act of valuing something is the expression of some values, some moral and cultural values. You value things because you have some values that allows you to value things as important or not important. For example, our society values a lot the speed and to be very fast doing things. So companies invest lots of money in productivity apps, automation processes, things like that. Maybe my grandmother, who was a woman that lived in the countryside, that loved a lot the countryside and had other rhythms for life, she didn't value so much to do things fast, the speed. She valued the slow life. Yes. And she bought things that allowed her to live a slow life, not a productivity app. She had a farm and she worked it, but she didn't like to be fast doing things. She liked to to be in a calm life. That's what she valued, and she had some values for that. Yes, he would never buy some notion of the past times. So what I think, and this is a Nietzschean idea, is that philosophy tries to think the source of values. That's what Nietzsche called genealogy, and I think that that is the most useful philosophical tool for businesses to track why some people value something. Because when you understand the values of your time, you can see how the future will change values and how this changed the values of the past and why the subjects value things as they value. For example, I work in a university. You work in a university, and maybe you've seen that around the world the universities have been losing students. In I think there are a few universities that don't live that problem. But most of the universities blame the reduction of natality. They say that there are less people, so there are fewer students, so we are losing students for that reason. The demographic argument is the most compelling argument for universities. But for example, when you see most young people today want to be Instagram or TikTok influencers, they don't value university. I think that the real thing is that our contemporary life has some values in which to be educated is not as important as 200 years ago. And that's the real crisis for universities. I don't think it is the people that is now. I think there is enough people to go to university. What happens really is that they don't value the university as institution itself. They don't think that is important. So you have to think why. Why do they think it is not important? And I think that's the moment where the genealogy, the Nietzschean tool works to understand markets. And you have to think it in a philosophical way, because you have to think how that value is formed, is shaped, is developing through history. That's the first sentence.
Yeah, very interesting. Let me probably pull a couple of threads before we go back to the second part of the sentence. One question is, what is the role of educational institutions in general? Because the reflection you were making about university, I could argue there is a similar problem even in high school or secondary education schools. I see the kids, their authority is the latest YouTuber, is not their teacher, not even their parents, depending on parents doing a good job or not. But that's indeed worrying. Yes, it's worrying because we think the old way, and we should probably understand more how or what the future is gonna unveil. Or there is an intrinsic value in education that, like, as a society, we are just not able to articulate anymore or invest in it anymore. Because just one more thought on universities: a lot of students these days treat university education as, I need to get the skill to get the job, whereas when I was a kid, I was thinking more as university, a sort of campus where I'm gonna learn how to learn, how to think, how to approach a subject. I chose physics. Back then, when I did choose physics, the mindset was also, oh yeah, physics won't give you a job, and that was wrong. In Italy at the time, there was more like the mindset of study being a lawyer, or a doctor or an engineer. This was the three professions to give a job. But the advice was always like, get to some skills that would give you a job. Whereas I believe the value of university education should probably transcend that.
Okay. So what I think is that that's another topic I love, the crisis of the education. Because I believe firmly in education. I think that the human being needs to be educated. Our brain needs to be educated. We have a genetic, but we have a cultural configuration of ourselves, and education is the mean to receive that cultural history. Nevertheless, I think that our crisis is a consequence of one thing. Education cannot be, I'm thinking it in Spanish because we say the word vulgar, that comes from the Latin vulgo. Yes, that is the popular people to say it in that way. I think that education is something for elites by nature. Education is not for everyone, not the formal education. Culture has always educated people through implicit systems. For example, the culture teaches people how to behave, models, manners. People learn how to do some jobs. For example, in the countryside, the son learns from the father how to do something. He doesn't have to go to an university to learn that. That was the human history until the last 100 years, to put it simple. Nevertheless, in one moment, we started thinking that everybody had to go to university. And it was one of the promises of the democracy. But that is not only something logistically almost impossible, but I think that is something that in an unavoidable way degrades the value of education. Why? Because when you educate someone, you have to accept a relation that most of pedagogists today try to deny, but I think they are wrong. And it's the relation of someone who knows and someone who doesn't know. Someone that has to learn, that has to do some transition from an state to a better state. Yes, that's education. But we live in a world that has two forces that won't accept that idea. And that is the crisis of the education. The first force is democracy. I believe in democracy, but I don't believe in democracy in colleges and universities. Yes, because in the university, you have to learn from the professor. You cannot say you're the same of the professor. Maybe you are the same, you're equal to the professor in a non education context. When you are in the classroom, the professor has an authority over you. Yes. And that is something unacceptable for democracy. Yes. And I think that many of the problems that are today in the US universities, yes, come from the idea of putting democracy in the center of the university. Yes, I think that's an error. Maybe if somebody hears this, will say that I am, I don't know, right person that doesn't like democracy, racist, or something like that. Yeah, but I don't think it is not about that. Think in the Olympics sport people. They are better than you or me. Yes, they win gold medals. They have some extraordinary abilities. And I think that's an elite. Yeah, and a sports elite. Education is about forming elites for society. That doesn't mean, as some people understand it, to educate rich people, wealthy people. Yes, it's about educating the best people, like an aristocracy. So the first force is democracy. Education is not compatible with democracy. And the second force is the markets. Yes, because markets are all founded in one principle, that is, the customer is always right. Yes, the customer is the one that values my product, so I have to serve it. Yes, that's true for business context. The thing in education is that a student is not a customer. Not for those idealist beliefs that no, we have to not market the education. No, education is in the markets and had been for the last 50 or 60 years. It is a business. But the thing is that what makes valuable that product implies that the customer cannot choose how the product should be. The customer has to surrender to the authority of the education. And that is something that the markets cannot accept. So universities are always in the tension of serving the market or defending the education value. I think that the solution for that is to be radical in defense of the education values and to not try to reach massive audiences, but to look what is the elite my university is forming. For example, my university in Bogota was so good forming lawyers and physicians. Yes. So it formed the elite of lawyers in Colombia. So it had to do that. Yeah. It had to radicalize in forming lawyers, not in forming the people. Man, that it's not so nice to say today because you have to be democratic. Everybody should go to university, but no, not everybody should go to university. And you see how the student loan is one of the major problems in the USA. And there are a lot of people that shouldn't be paying that loans because in principle, those people should have never studied. Most of the Americans never went to university and they flourished. They didn't have to do it. And they forged the richest nation on earth.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's incredibly like thoughtful. Yeah, this is incredibly thoughtful, and I resonate with so many things you've said. I was thinking it's funny how we are so let's say we are so in love with the mechanism that we call democracy, that we tend to want to see it everywhere and apply it everywhere, but it's not fit on purpose for every context and reality. And it's funny how, like, in corporate culture, for example, it's perfectly acceptable that corporates are dictatorships, and we are fine with that, and we know that that's the way it should be, right? And yeah, it's interesting how, with different contexts, incentives, and how we assign values, these things play out differently. And also reminds me that, for instance, my grandma, she was a primary school teacher and became principal. She was held in high regard and never went to university. So back then, society was different because primary school teacher was a highly regarded job, whereas today it's not the same. Like, it's completely different. And market forces were also different because you could do like a very decent living as a teacher, whereas this day, again, it's completely different. So I really agree that, these two forces, market forces and democracy, misplaced, put in crisis these institutions. Back to what we were discussing about value, how value, changes over history. There was another writing that I came across from, probably on, I can't recall if it was your LinkedIn or Substack, but you were writing about a contrast between utility, user experience of a tech product, and value. What's the market judgment? Arguing that products can be useful without being valuable. Can you give us an example of, let's say, something everyone thinks is valuable but actually isn't?
I always think in something that, at least in Colombia, most people don't have. That is an avocado, like a special gadget to open avocados. I don't even know how it is called. Someone, maybe in Denmark or one of those countries in Germany, invented it. Yeah, and thought it could be very useful to have something through which you can open avocados in an easy way and not with a knife in the most classic way. I think most people don't have that because it is useful for something, but in the values, in the scale of values of people, it is the last thing you care about. But in contrast, you can have some highly unuseful things, but that you value a lot. For example, the art. Artworks are one of the most expensive things in world, and most art collectionists won't find many useful things in the art. Yes, there is a whole philosophical discussion about the utility of art and the functional role of art, but for most people, it doesn't have any useful trait. You just see it, and you don't treat the art as you treat, I don't know, this computer or the headphones. You don't treat it, as Heidegger says, like a thing ready to hand. Yes, you treat it like something that you don't use, but it's highly valuable. Or maybe, I don't know, the taxes web portals it had very low usability. UX in the taxes portals, I think in most of states is the same thing, are horrible. They are badly designed, but as you fear what happens when you don't pay taxes, you use them. Yes, even if you don't have any utility from paying taxes. Yes, you just have to do it. So you do it and you fear what happens, so you will always do it.
That's
That's
right.
it's on the things have to be useful, but they have to be valuable. They cannot be something that people don't care about.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this helps me segueing into AI. There's a lot of debate. There is a lot of hype on this technology. It's very difficult to assign value, and the way people speak about value in AI or AI tools that proliferates everywhere these days is very different. What's your experience with AI? Do you use some tools? Do you find it valuable? Give us some thoughts on that.
My experience with AI when ChatGPT 2 was released, that was the hype, I started using it a lot and I use it for almost everything. I talked to it. Then I realized that I didn't find any real important thing in that. I didn't find what I like to read, what I like to write. I just was playing with a game, with something like that. So I don't find it so useful. I find it useful for things I don't want to do. Yes, but I think that most of the hype with AI comes from a value that doesn't find utility. So most of the CEOs want to implement AI in their companies. Yes, because they have a technological value in their minds. Yes, so OpenAI sells billions of dollars to people that just value its product but don't know what to do with it. Yes, because they don't find any real useful thing. Yes, we will automate these processes. What process? To answer emails. Yes, hey, what's the real problem answering emails? Email, in principle, shouldn't exist, but it exists. For most people, emails are just something you accumulate and you don't even read. Yes? So, what's the useful thing about that? To automate something for automating, something that in principle you shouldn't be doing. Yes? Uh, and there are just few real useful applications of AI for most people because most people use it and lose a lot of time using it. Yes, there is the joke that I took 20 minutes giving a prompt to ChatGPT to learn something that would took me 20 seconds in Google. Yes, I think most of the cases are those cases. Uh, for most people, I don't deny it in other context. For example, in the analysis of big data sets. Yes, maybe you in those contexts you will need to multiply your mind. Yes, in some things, and the AI could do it for you. But most real daily uses are stupid things, are not real things.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I often stress that the world of AI is much bigger than ChatGPT and companies. Like, there are tools like DeepMind, AlphaFold that has made groundbreaking step forwards into protein folding, predictive analytics, big data analysis. There's a lot of things. Like, my background is in mainly data science and machine learning for big data analysis and predictive models in financial services. So I've seen a lot of value definitely deliver there, and we can connect probably this with education. Like, there are many voices now saying, "Oh, tools like ChatGPT, can help a lot in education." But on again, from one of those readings, I was very fascinated by the fact that AI is pushing us towards Western-centric perspectives, because most of the training data existing on the internet is highly influenced or weighted over, Western English corpora. And on top of that, we know that these models, they predict the most likely next, fragment of a word. And that means that if you use that for learning about a subject or writing, you're going to get the average result. You're not going to get the exceptional result.
Exactly.
And there's a real risk to create uniformity in creative output. What does that mean? What do you say foresee if we don't come across some, let's say, either resistance or methodologies to use it in the appropriate context?
Uh-huh. Okay, I think that for education, that is the complete denial of learning. Yes, because as I was saying, in education, you go from negative state, you don't know something, you don't know how to do something, to a positive state. You learn how to do something, you discover something in the world, but you just don't replicate the past. What you were explaining, the stochastic nature of those machines is that the future is the same of the past. Yes. So you just live in common sense. You cannot create, as Henri Bergson, the great French thinker, says, intelligence, not artificial intelligence. Intelligence is to make the same from the same. Yes. Life is creating the different thing. And I think that's the real issue. We are relying a lot in that trend of the intelligence, the trend of making the same out of the same. Yes. And we are falling in some fog of the sameness thinking, and not the difference thinking, the divergent thinking. And that's a real danger for companies, for society. Society rises and develops when people can think different. But when you get used to think every time in the way people in the past that registered their thinking in some data surfaces, you're relying in that surfaces, you just repeat. You don't create something different. And that's the real danger. That's not knowledge. That's not creativity. That's not invention of the new. Yes, and that's the real thing we need in science, in arts, in politics, in everything, businesses.
Yeah, that's definitely something to worry about. And I think it probably helps us to reconnect with the sentence we started with. So philosophy discovers where value is. And the second part was what mental paradigms prevent us from delivering value.
Okay.
What mental paradigms have you learned that prevent organizations to deliver value in general, in the context of using AI, or your personal life, your personal experiences?
Yes. When I talk about paradigms, I'm thinking in Thomas Kuhn's philosophy. Nevertheless, I don't like so much to think in that word because I've read Kuhn's work, and I think it is not very precise word for what I want to say. Yes, it is an useful word to say it simple to many people. But what I understand 10 is a set of beliefs of what it means to be a human being, of what it means to think, of what it means to do something. I think that most companies are trapped in sets of beliefs, silent beliefs, or not explicit beliefs that force them to think in the same way of their competition. Beliefs that force us to imitate the others. We live in the imitation world. That is something we just could call society. Society forces us to be like the others, and that's a part of living in the world. You can't deny it. But the value is what you discover outside of those beliefs, of those convergent trends. So, what I think about the mental paradigms that doesn't uh, that allowed us to think and to deliver value is that you have to question the common sense. What is the common sense? The things that you take for obvious, and you have to question them. You have to be aware of what you think is obvious and to question the obvious. Why the obvious is an obvious thing. Yes. And when you do that exercise, it's not an easy exercise. You find all the industry rules that prevent you to deliver value in a new way. Think, for example, in the iPhone. That is an iconic example for those things. Or not the iPhone, the Macintosh in the 80s by Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs found that most of technology companies didn't think in aesthetics things. They were always thinking in technology, in an engineer mindset. Yes, he realized that he could approach technology from an artistic mindset. And he founded one of the most iconic companies in the world from that point of view. Yes, and that's something very admirable for myself, and something that you have to learn from, to ask your own industry, why do you think your business in a way? and how you could think it in another way. What happens with AI is that as you delegate your thinking to a machine, you're just using the same machine and the same thinking of the rest of the billions of people in the world. Yes, you're not trying to look for your own difference. Yes, I think it has to do something with the artistic point of view. Artists find their vocations through their lives when they start thinking how they are different from the others. But they have to come back to the world and find how my difference links me to the world, attach me to the world. Albert Camus, he had your same name. He says in his Nobel speech that an artist become really an artist when he finds his similarities to the others. What makes the common with the others? But it's a common that is not common sense. It's a common that is recognizing that the other is an strange. You are strange to the other, but you find something in common. That's when the relations become special, and that's when you convert your difference in something valuable to others. What you have to think in mental paradigms is what is preventing you from realizing your vocation, your real difference, and what would you have to do to come back to the world from an authentic point of view. As Heidegger says, it is about living an authentic life.
Fantastic advice. I think a lot of people would resonate with that. Yeah, I think we are towards the end. We can wrap up this fantastic conversation. There are probably another billion of questions that I would like to ask you, but we can organize, a part two
Yes.
later on. I think I have three super quick questions to respond in one sentence that I want to ask you. First one is, let's say, on a positive note on AI and following your latest thought, do you think some artists or some great minds like Steve Jobs would figure out probably a different ways to approach the technology and make it more useful than it looks today?
Some possible minds from the past. So people that you think could approach differently to this technology.
Or even like, is there a chance someone who's more like an artist than a technologist would figure out these days a good use or a good frame?
Maybe it will happen because I'm not a pessimist. I think that humanity always find a path to their problems. I don't know who would do it, but I think it demands an artistic point of view. If you think it, the think of the artificial, that word comes from the art. It's a problem of faking something. AI is the real fake it till you make it. But the art of faking something is something that you find in the art history. How to look like. And I think that is even the genius idea of Alan Turing, that he said the problem is not if machines think. The problem is if they look like they were thinking.
Yeah, exactly. Faking until you make it at scale and common sense at scale, which we should probably challenge more. Fun question. Give me an AI confession. So what's one thing you use AI for that you're slightly embarrassed about?
Yes, I use it a lot for my last job to make research, to write some things in a fast way, things that I was always defending myself as I had done it. Maybe no, I don't have so much AI confessions. I don't think it is a shame to use it. I not feel shamed of using it. I just don't like it to the most special things. And I just say, if you want to use it, but be aware of what it means to use it. That's my whole point.
Yeah, great advice. And final question, is philosophy the new MBA? Should business school be teaching Deleuze instead of
I
Gantt
think
charts?
they should be doing it. I work in a business school and we're launching. I don't want to make some advertising here, but I have to tell it. We're doing that. We're creating Sophie applied programs to business contexts. I think humanities in general give another point of view to business people. There are some studies about that because they found that people with arts, philosophy, and those backgrounds can give a superior approach, higher approach to problems. Robert Chia, that I recommended you a book of him. I like his work too much. He's a professor of Glasgow University in Adam Smith Business School. He says in a 1996 paper, it has my age, I was born that year, that when business students confront arts, philosophy, literature, they learn how to change their minds because most of the education today promotes a fixed mindset. Yes, you have a belief and you won't change it. But the art doesn't work that way. You have to learn new ways to look. You learn how Monet looked at the world and you learn how Picasso looked at the world. So I think that when you learn that, not because you have to be an expert in art history or an expert in Plato's works, you learn how to change your fixed beliefs. And I think that most business would do a better job if they teach that to their students because most analytical and technical skills change through time. You learn something in the 90s and you have to learn something new in the 2020s. That's the fate of technical education. Yes, but that is not the fate of liberal education. Business are in the middle of mechanic arts, as they call it in the medieval ages, and the liberal arts. Yes, and they have to accept that it's not only technical and it's not only liberal arts. It's something in the middle. Maybe philosophy should be the next MBA.
Fantastic. Yeah, I would agree with that. Thank you, Simon. It was incredibly helpful having you here. I think there are a lot of lessons to be drawn from this conversation, and I really hope we can, book a part two.
Oh, I hope it, and I hope it happens, and it happens with not so much uh, late uh, canceled and that. Alberto, thank you very
Yeah,
much. I loved to talk with you. Sorry for the little so many mistakes and error, but
yeah,
uh,
no worries. That's not a problem at all. I'm not native as well, so I stumble across things
okay.
myself as
But I
well.
never talked to nobody in English, so I had to do something.
Ah,
Thank
it
you
was
very much.
great.